Welcome back to another episode of Showing Our Sass, the podcast. I'm your host, MartaGwyn, and today I'm joined by my friend Patrycja. Patrycja and I met many, many years ago. We're two Arkansas immigrants who happen to share a love of education. We have been engaged in this education game for a long time together, supporting students while also making sure that we seek out and identify opportunities for educators to become better able to do their jobs through professional development. We help them to get research experiences, but also to have training opportunities. And this is just a legacy that we continue to see fruit produced from, and it just gives us joy. We just have a lot of fun figuring out how to make these opportunities for everyone involved. So we want to tell you a little bit about that today. So let's get into it.
All right, well, my name is Patrycja Krakowiak Valdivia, and that name tells a lot of the story. I was born and raised in Poland, and I came to the United States when I was 11 years old. And so I speak Polish and English, and then I married a Peruvian, so I also speak Spanish. I have three beautiful daughters who are strong and kind, and I'm probably most proud of that in my whole life. And I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry with an emphasis in molecular biology, a PhD in human genetics, a postdoctoral fellowship from NIH. I then moved to Arkansas and was an assistant professor for 3 years at UAMS in the pediatrics department. So I worked at the Arkansas Children's Hospital Research Institute. And during my whole time as a research scientist, I really focused in on birth defects and studied how they occur, what genetically happens. And it's been quite a lovely story. Started very as a frustrated young woman trying to figure everything out and solve the world's problems, but it has come full circle in many different ways. I am currently teaching as a life science specialist at the Arkansas School for Math Sciences and the Arts. I have been doing that for over 15 years, almost 16 now. And I have amazing students who truly want to learn, and I have really taken that on as a sort of badge of honor. I really want to plant seeds and fan flames. That's what it says on my brick at the school, because I really feel like what I start can grow, can flourish, and that's what gets me up in the morning. I am also a teacher of teachers. I have 40, I guess we have 43, 44 now in our program, representing most counties in Arkansas for AP biology teachers to help them become a more, not just aware of the content and pedagogy, but really give them confidence to teach better themselves. I realized early on that there's a lot of things that teachers could do better. And it also makes me a better teacher if I have to teach someone else to be a teacher. I'm also co-director of the Arkansas Summer Research Institute, which is for underrepresented undergraduate students. This is something that has really touched me very deeply, because I realize how much students are able to network and connect with professors all over the state. They're able to develop, again, their confidence. That's like the most important thing I think I've found in teaching, is to develop students' confidence and being able to pursue research as an undergraduate, which is so important in anything they do, whether they go into the workforce, whether they go into research, whether they go into medicine. This is a key factor that a lot of students in Arkansas were missing because they weren't prepared. And we had to shift that all virtual. So that was another thing that I did. And finally, I think I want to just mention that I love teaching. So I get an opportunity like this, or an opportunity to speak at a science and arts cafe that we do, or teach sixth graders that just came on campus last weekend to just explore cancer research. So there are these tidbits of and things that I've done all along, trying to reach out to all groups at all ages, at all levels, and educate them. Give a talk about alcoholism and genetics at a recent conference, and another East conference. I spoke about the digital tools that we learned during this pandemic, and how that is actually a silver lining. If there are things we can actually use that we haven't been using in person, in face-to-face learning. So that's about me,
And that lets
kind
you
of
know
the
there's
the
very
generic
little
view.
she doesn't do. Very, very little that you don't do.
There are many hats that I wear.
Yes, that's one of the reasons why we get along. And and they will probably find out in this conversation that undergraduate research institute that you do has a special place in my heart for a very important reason. But before we get into that, let's jump off and talk about what do you wish you had known at the beginning of your career.
I think it is what I have already said that teaching is most about. And that is, I wish I had had more confidence. If my older self could visit my younger self, the first thing I would say, it's going to be okay. It's an amazing ride. Don't be scared. I think that's one thing. I was afraid I wasn't enough. I was afraid I wouldn't do enough. I was afraid I would fizzle out. And that's because there were so many roadblocks, there were so many challenges, there were so many days when it seemed like there was just no way to break through. And now I know it's about me. It's about me pushing through, me being in charge of what happens. It's not about fate, and it's not about what other people hand me. It's what I take, it's what I do. And I did not know that at the beginning. I thought that I had to be, a genius, a prodigy, this person who did everything and discovered everything, and that it would never be enough. I am enough. My life journey has been enough. It has been so much more than enough. And even if I had 1/10 of the experiences I've had, I would be so happy. So I would have told myself to be less nervous, less afraid, more confident. And really, what I wish I had known is that no matter how many people and events stand in my way, there are ways around. This idea of windows closing and another one opening, doors opening, is just so much about my life, where it seems like things aren't going well, or it seems like there's problems, and I don't you can't overcome them, and then there's an end somewhere. So that's, I think, I wish I knew. I also wish I knew that not everyone's going to be helpful along my journey. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's okay. There are people who will be in the way. And instead of trying to please them or trying to make friends or trying to do anything, stay away. If someone is actively impacting your life negatively, you have got to put some distance and not be afraid of them, not be worried about them, not think that they will ruin your life, your career, whatever.
There's a term I love.
There will be people like that.
It's called energy vampires. You want to avoid energy vampires who just suck the life out of you and don't leave you with the energy you need to pour into the projects that are important and close to your heart. Let me tell you, as your friend, fear is not a word I associate in the same galaxy with you. Just so you know.
Well, I have come such a long way, right? Because you had said, what do you wish you knew at the beginning? And that is what I wish I knew, that fear is not necessary for accomplishment. Even competition is not all it's cut out to be, unless you're competing with yourself.
Oh, can we say that for the people in the back of the room? Because one of the biggest things I've learned is that I'm a highly competitive spirit. Okay, I want to do the best. I want to win. I want to be the A+ student. It is a serious matter for me. However, age has given me a little bit of wisdom to understand if you can collaborate over competing with someone, you can have such a bigger impact on things.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that is just the perspective of living a little while, as the elders used to tell me. Keep on living, baby. Just keep on living. You'll see. You'll understand.
That's right.
It's about more than the top trophy. You mentioned that there were some roadblocks. Is there one you'd like to share with us that you had an opportunity to learn from?
I think what I want to share is a roadblock that keeps coming up. Okay. It's something that's happened everywhere I've worked. It's something that's happened every time I try to become something better, promote myself. Um, and it's so strange because I still to this day haven't figured it out fully, meaning I'm still trying to come up with why. In every place that I've been, I've had someone or even one or two people who have been the roadblock, who have tried to pull me down actively, not because I got in their face or anything. First example, I asked for first authorship on a paper for which I did the most work. So I felt very justified, and I got a stapler thrown at me by the first author
Oh my.
in front of everyone. So that's pretty big, right? And that pretty much illustrates all the other times, which were figurative staplers being thrown at me. So instead of a physical one, the next time I was in a laboratory, I was doing my job and someone got afraid maybe of my success or didn't feel comfortable with me and went to the boss and said, she doesn't do anything, like actively trying to, you know, discourage my success or get in my way. Or and the boss came and I said, let's sit down, I'll show you all my notebooks, you're in the same lab every day, you shouldn't have someone else have to tell you that I'm not doing things.
Because you
So I
document.
showed them. I document everything.
Oh yeah.
This is what taught me to document every step, every second of my time. And I showed him and I said, what more can I do? What more would you like me to do? I had young children at home. So even though everybody stayed in the lab, from 9 to 9, I went home for dinner and then I came back. And once he looked at all the notebooks, there were years later, I had copied everything and left the originals. And he was saying, on page 69 of the 45th notebook, or whatever. And I was like, let me look that up for you and tell you what I did there. So it was binders and notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of stuff, a whole shelf. And so he couldn't really, he couldn't question that. But because he had that seed planted, the way I got my jobs was because I had the worst possible letters of recommendations that anyone had ever read. And so they were curious. That's
Really?
how I got my best jobs. Yes, every time. Okay, that's not what I'm going to tell people to try to emulate. I'm just telling you my story. It's insanity.
I actually started teaching my students, always ask for one additional letter than you need.
Yes.
From a reviewer,
yes.
especially the first time you're dealing with them, and you open one of those and see what it is they're saying about you, because they can probably
That's right. Well, and what happened to me was these were the people who had to write a letter because they were my immediate supervisors. So even though the people who were trying to be the roadblocks were not the ones I was asking for references, they were the ones that were whispering in the ear of the main person. And that main person would write, this is not a good person. And the people at NIH literally invited me on a plane to come and do a talk, because who could be doing nothing when she has 5 publications as a graduate student? You know what I'm saying? Like it didn't match up. They understood there had to be something else. And it's the same thing coming to UAMS. The woman who hired me, she said, I had to meet you. I had never read a reference letter, unfortunately, these people wouldn't actually share these letters with me. I was so curious, but she said, I had to meet you. You had so many amazing publications and talks. And then this male writes about you in such a negative way. And then she found out who I was and was like, this is exactly who we need right here. This is who needs to run the lab. And they didn't take that letter as the only thing to check on, And so again, these main people were not the ones who were displeased with me. It was other people that were on the side for whom it shouldn't matter what I was doing.
And I'll just add a little something here, because there are people who watch this who don't understand how the academy works or how education works. A negative reference letter can spell the end of a career. Someone
That's right.
can have an attitude with you, they just don't like how you are, and they can put out the word, so to speak. And the more specialized your area or your field, the more impactful those letters can be in a positive or negative way. So my word for it is bizarre. And I will say it, even if you don't. I have witnessed this kind of blockade
especially when you're dealing in some of the natural and physical sciences, medicine, when women are working to assert themselves, or when those who are underrepresented in a field, in many of those categories, attempt to try to do the work so that they can then be recognized for the work, so that they can ascend in the same ways as their male counterparts. And so it is bizarre.
And I definitely have felt that.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. And I have definitely felt that when I had to look back about 5 years ago and think what happened, and with the elections when they happened, that really spoke volumes to me about being a woman. I had never considered for a second that's what the problem was. But I was 18 years old when I was in grad school, and I was female, and this and a foreigner, and this was definitely not someone who was supposed to be speaking out for herself. Um, so I think I definitely had more than one letter. I definitely had my resume that spoke for itself, right? And so it definitely helped. And I think that a negative letter can absolutely destroy a career. And I was just, this is that one thing where, a window closes, a door opens, whatever. It's like, let's just say I got lucky, because wherever else I sent that resume, that letter, they didn't even care to think about it. They thought, oh, this is trouble, let's not do this. Whereas others were like, this is unusual. This is somebody vindictive would write this, not someone who's actually assessing how well this person can do. And in my last position, at Arkansas Children's Hospital Research Institute, there was a situation with another male who was just not going to let me do my job. He wanted me to do his job, and he wanted me to do another person's job, and but not my own job. And so that ended up pretty poorly too. But he was excused from his job, and a security guard was standing there as he was leaving, because later, after I had already left, they discovered he was fabricating data. So there were things that I think I ended up with that were very unlucky, in that the people who were sort of in charge of me, or at least my bosses, my supervisors, were either not willing to let me have my own niche, were not willing to let me have my own success, were saying I was only there for their pleasure, in a sense, right? For their success, for their well-being. I mean, I remember 9 months pregnant with my second daughter, a week after 9/11, okay, flying to San Diego from DC. So you can imagine the fear. That was my biggest talk of my life. I was not going to let it go. And maybe I was 7 months pregnant, but the fish gets bigger every time I tell the story. But anyway, I had the biggest talk of, that's bad. I was basically going to give the talk of my life. And I knew it. It was at the American Society for Human Genetics. It was huge. There were 1,000 people. I was talking about a new disease that we discovered. It was awesome. It was huge. And literally the day before the talk, my boss comes up to me and says, I'm going to do the talk. You don't need to do the talk. And thank goodness my dad and my mom drove from Utah to San Diego. And my dad was standing behind me and saying, oh no, in his very strong Polish accent, you do not do that to my daughter, and the guy was short and backed off. But that's literally, I can't make this stuff up. I can't. I've tried to think, maybe I'm just looking at it wrong. Maybe I'm just not giving people enough credit, but who does that? I applied for the talk. I was the one who made the discovery as a group, as a team. He was the PI. Okay. But you don't go a day before the talk and say, I'm going to do the talk. No.
But when you look at it, how old were you when that happened?
I was about 25.
And that is a very big deal conference for anyone. But someone who's 25 who by normal American calculations should just barely be getting ready to defend a dissertation, who has already been in the field. Here you are. Think about it this way. Here you are married, you have children, you have your doctorate already, you're rapidly progressing through your career, and you haven't had very many people helping you along the way. So I could see where that could start to, bang at someone else. How is she doing? She must be cheating. She can't possibly. She can't. no one can, how can she, no, there's something wrong here. I'm going to tear this down because this can't be,
That's right.
And
I mean, this happened literally, with my first PI for my graduate school. He said, you can't possibly have written a dissertation. He refused to read it. He refused to read it. He refused to sign my certificate. And my committee had to tell him, if you don't, you will never be department chair. Because she has done everything. She has published 5 papers. She has written this entire dissertation. And he had said that a previous student, because he had never had students, that should have been an alarm bell, that a previous student's husband wrote it. And I said, yes, my husband, who speaks barely any English, wrote my dissertation, who has no scientific background, and he had to admit that's not possible. My introduction, one of the committee members said to him, I know you haven't read it because I'm going to use that introduction in my class. That will be my introductory textbook for my developmental class. And that sort of kind of shut him down. And he was like, but she couldn't have. Exactly what you're saying, maybe you've hit the nail on the head.
Because he couldn't imagine, if I can't do it. See, here's another thing that I want people to understand. Just because you're smart in one particular way or a couple of different ways does not mean that you are going to be good at supervising other people. And I wish the academy could understand that, because what they often want to call soft skills are the hardest thing in the world. It's harder than any area of other science. I don't care what you say, because human beings don't make any sense whatsoever. Okay? They are hard, they're squishy. They don't reveal themselves. We have so many different variants of how we can go with things. And so I wish that me just preach a little, I wish we would stop thinking that a person who has the most number of publications, the person who's won the most grant money and whatnot, should inherently be the leader of a department or a provost who's supposed to oversee the career readiness and maintenance of an entire faculty. You have to address the human element.
I mean, it's the same as professors never having any pedagogy training.
Yeah.
That's insane. And it's very rare that a scientist automatically knows how to teach, I pride myself on being a good teacher, but that's not because I'm a good scientist. It's something else. You have to work at it. You have to train, you have to learn, you have to be empathic, you have to be kind, you have to be a comic sometimes. There's so many things. Yes.
You went to others, you studied, you did training, you got certification.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I did forget to mention, because I didn't have it in front of me or written down, but yes, I didn't know how to teach when I was transitioning. So I did state, it was an alternate path. So I didn't have to go back to the university. It was an alternate path. I had to go, for 2 weeks, twice during the summer and every Saturday, that kind of thing, to get state certified. And then I've also gotten my national board certification after that, because I keep wanting to grow. I want to know what other people know, and that's always been a strength. I don't know it all. Yeah. Well, it's kind of amazing, the person who threw the stapler, it turns out that this person needed me 10 years later when I was at the head of a CDC grant for birth defects, and had to come back and say, I need to do a site visit at your facility. How does that happen in the world? I mean, out of all the billions of people, how did that happen? And I said, okay, but you will need to put my name on this publication that you're publishing my data. Even though I'm not in the lab, you're using my notebook and my data. And so I was able to leverage something, which was another thing I learned, when you need to speak up, even if you're afraid. I have so many friends, especially women, who are afraid of confrontation, and I don't revel in it. I don't want to do it. They think that it's easy for me. Absolutely not. But I just understand the importance of it.
Yeah.
It's straining. It's awful, but it's sometimes necessary. And that's when I realized
it truly is combat. You have to prepare yourself. And when it's more than you, when you have to consider a spouse, when you have to consider children who could be negatively impacted by you having to gear up, put on your battle armor and go for it, I think of us, I don't know if it's the right term of it, but I think of it as a salt eater. I think women are salt eaters. We take in things and we just hold it.
Yeah.
And we very much, they say choose your battles. Well, we often take it and we internalize it because we're like, I'm going to lose too much fighting for this thing that I want or need. It's gonna, and so we take a lot more in than we really probably ought to in that. And when we make the decision to have these professional careers, it's even more of a calculation when you're going through. Do I allow someone to continue to take credit for my work? I'm coming from me. Do I allow them to take credit for my work so that I can keep this job secure, so that I have benefits to cover? Because right now, real situation, my spouse is in school and I have the better benefits. Like, and how much of this abuse am I going to take? Because that is abuse. Having someone take credit for the work you have done and not acknowledge you, that is abuse. It is wrong.
Yes,
You're not
absolutely.
earning
But
your
it happens.
It's
But it
wrong.
happens, but it happens a lot more often than it should.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I learned, that if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else will. It is your job to promote yourself. It is your job to know limitations. And it is so hard sometimes when I see my female friends who are just like, I'm just not gonna rattle the cage, you know? And I said, okay, but there are certain things you should. You
And I'll tell you,
absolutely should.
I have your children see what choices you make. I have a
Yes.
mother who has a PhD. She's the first in our family, to get a PhD. Okay, she actually walked at the same time as one of her younger sisters from the University of Iowa. And I remember when she came up for tenure review, her department did not want to give it to her. She had done everything, and she had solo authored in education, which in some ways, no disrespect to the sciences, can be even harder depending on where you are, because there's less money in it,
Yeah.
so you're already resource poor on that thing. And it took the provost's office overturning the decision of the department because they knew they were going to get sued. There was no good reason for them to try to deny her tenure. And I saw my mom. That was one time she had to gear up. She and my dad, actually, because they both worked at the university. They were like, if this is the hill we got to go down on, we're going for it because this is ridiculous.
Gotta do it.
One
Yeah.
has to go through that. If you do the work, you should be recognized for it.
I have run against that. That's the obstacle, you know. I've run against everywhere I've been, no matter where I have gone. This is I always find the wall being another person not letting me across it, you know. Leave me alone. I'm not hurting you, other than you being unhappy about this outcome because you didn't ever think it could happen. You know, I watched Hidden Figures with my daughters when it came out, and I bawled the entire time. And my daughters were looking at me going, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "That's my life." But these are women in 1950s, 1960s. This is my life in 2000. Like, people think, "Oh, it's so much better now. We are just over that." You know, forget it. Forget it. Every single thing that was happening there has happened to me in a different way, like claiming credit with the, you know, authorship, like trying to take away what was mine, like being looked down upon because of who I am. You know, a female immigrant. That's not an easy thing to overcome for anyone. The thing that I had sort of, I don't know if it was going for me or against me, but I never saw myself as such. I never saw myself as a female fighting a battle. I never saw myself as an immigrant fighting a battle. I never saw myself as anyone but who did the work, right? Like, you don't have to see my face, know my name. This is what I did. And you should be rewarded for what you do, as you just said. And unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. You know, my sisters both went through getting a PhD and had amazing mentors. And I was just so proud and happy for them, and said, it can work well. Like, it can work the way it should. That's why we need more female mentors who, you know, in my last position, the female mentor, my boss, came up to me. We had a meeting with the person who was abusive, and said, yeah, you can't work in this situation, but he's got grants. I got to let you go, you know? And that was really hard for her to say. But at least she understood what it was, because she was female as well and she had dealt with these kind of things, and
And
it
she
broke
showed
her
the
heart.
respect of being honest with you
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
this
and
is
helping
what
you
has to happen.
thrive in this space. I've asked that question of myself oftentimes too, because I was born in Savannah, Georgia. My family left for a number of reasons and moved to Iowa City, Iowa, but the chief one being mom going back to get her PhD from Iowa, where she'd done her master's in the same university. So it was not an easy transition. Where I was raised in Savannah, I was raised in a bubble. I was raised in a black bubble. I was the eldest granddaughter of a very prominent Black Baptist minister, and there's certain kinds of things that come along with that. But it was a very protective, insulated community. I saw very few white people in my first 8 years of my life. Even though they were there, they just kept us away because Savannah is a very divided city. It still is. Um, and then we moved to Iowa City, Iowa, actually Coralville, Iowa, where we literally knew the names of every Black family. We could go days without seeing another brown face. And that was quite a shock. And I asked oftentimes to the universe, to the God of my understanding, I'm like, why did we have to go through that? Why did I have to become an alien at the age of 8? And I'm watching our time. And one of the answers I've gotten back, because then we came back south to Arkansas, which was weird because it's south, but not south where I came to, because I was in Northwest Arkansas. The answer came to me because I knew you could take it and because I needed
Right.
you to be in that space to help these other people. Because you said you didn't harm that individual who just couldn't believe and was being a blockade in your life, but you pushed him. And people often don't like to be pushed into uncomfortable situations, which kind of ties to what we're dealing with socially right now. We look at trying to make sure everyone has access to rights and the ability to live life to the fullest, health, wealth, happiness. We say that's a good thing until it gets in the way of something that we want. And then it's a problem because I'm uncomfortable. I want what I want. So it's a human nature thing, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have asked myself, why me, so many times until I stopped asking, because I realized, as you did, I needed to be there for someone else. I needed to be there for some reason. And right now, as a teacher, it's become much easier, right? So now when I wake up in the morning, there's faces and minds and hearts waiting for me, and they appreciate it. And I appreciate having that option, that opportunity to have so many others lifted because I'm in there. So my whole life story has taken me to where I am and who I am. And if I didn't have all those adversities, I wouldn't be who I am. And that's another way of looking at it.
True, true, true. I feel like we ought to jump into the whole because I feel very inspired. I want you to tell us who and what inspires you. Like, tell me about some of the people, some of the things you've read or encountered in life that inspire you.
So, like the ultimate hero of my life is Marie Curie Skłodowska. She was a Polish scientist and one of the only people who've, won 2 Nobel Prizes in different fields. And she is one of those people who faced adversity constantly and broke through, somehow broke through. And she said, there's nothing in life to be feared. It's only to be understood. And that's really, really hit home this year. It is time to understand and not fear. And I think that's not just for my life, but especially this year has been so true. The more we understand, the less we fear. And again, at this point in my life, understanding is the goal. The fear has started to fall by the wayside, thank goodness, with perspective of time, right? And what inspires me most, and the people who inspire me most, instead of individuals, it's groups, right? So my daughters, first and foremost. Everything I do with an eye out for them, for who they are. They're watching me, right? So I am a role model. I'm somebody who they look up to, and what I do and how I behave affects who they're going to be. But it's even deeper than that. They show me what life is like without fear. I was raised in a household where I was afraid, not for physical reasons, but emotional. It was very strict. It was very difficult and tough. And again, it made me into a person who I am, but I think I could have thrived beyond, right? So I'm watching them in this bubble of happiness and care and kindness and seeing what can happen, and it's just every day energizes me and gives me hope for the future of this world. So their kindness and their beauty within is unparalleled. I just kind of smile, get this goofy smile on my face, even when they're like fighting or upset. I'm just like, oh,
They are
it's just,
wonderful.
it's
They are
there.
so wonderful. Listening to your daughter perform is transformative. I mean, you feel her expressing her art, as that music flows out of our room. So yeah, I hear you.
That creativity and ability to just go beyond is truly amazing. I know that she thrives on making people feel, right? And her music does that for sure. And each of my daughters is so different, but each in such amazing ways. Another group of people are my friends, my female friends. I've surrounded myself with several friends who are truly um, breaking through, right? So they're in fields, in places, in ways, changing, adapting, moving. And Marta, you're one of those people that I look up to so much. Yes, because it gave me permission, right? So before I was a little bit more timid and withdrawn about pursuing, about breaking through, thinking outside of the box. For those who are listening, Marta and I have known each other for close to those 15 years that I've been in Hot Springs, with trying to implement professional development for teachers in their content area that just did not exist in Arkansas at all. And stretching that to younger people in our CABS Academy, and just seeing a kindred spirit who was willing to go places I was trying to go without saying, now, wait a minute, that's crazy. That's too much work, or there's not funding, or that's what I was kept running into with other people. Marta said, no, wait a minute, we can do this.
Let's figure this out. It's almost like Zena and Gabrielle going for it,
Yeah, we can do this. And I have two other friends, Whitney and Ashley, who have shown me, they're younger than me by about 10 years, and they've shown me that women today have to continue to struggle and push, but they can, right? While maintaining their integrity, while maintaining their motherhood. It's inspiring. It's what I always wanted to see and didn't in other places. And that's the third group of people, my elders, my mother, my mother-in-law, my grandmothers. They, in a way, taught me what not to do, but it's not their fault. It's in a way, they were in a world where no matter what they did, they got slammed in the head. No matter what they tried, no matter how strong-willed, no matter, they had to use manipulation more than straightforward because I am, which I can use more in today's world because I have done. Here is my resume. Don't read whether I'm male or female, just look at what I've done. They had to be behind the scenes. They had to, and that's why I say manipulation, we always think it's negative, but they had to be smart enough to know how to get their stuff out there, how to get things done without any recognition, without any knowledge by the male counterparts knowing what was happening. And it really stripped them of so much. My grandmothers both went through World War II, and I heard those stories and what it took from them, and how their, not just childhood and innocence, but their ability to live happily was taken away. They died in those wars, and the rest of their life, they were trying to catch their breath. And it's amazing to me that as a child, I didn't see that, right? They were just these loving people who could envelop you with their arms and everything else went away, but they themselves suffered so much.
But that was
and so I learned from them.
they wanted to make sure that they
That's right.
poured that love into you, maybe even more so because of what they had lived through. I think people don't really like, especially younger people right now, they don't understand. Our grandparents, my grandfather served in World War II. This is a man I knew my whole life. And my
Right.
great grandfather served in World War I, his father. So we
Right.
don't, because we have not gone through a true world war in that sense in these in our generation, and then or our parents. Well, our parents had Vietnam and Korea.
Right.
They weren't world wars, but they were significant. And I don't
Right.
think they.
But it wasn't necessarily on this land though, too. I think that's something that's important to realize. Like from being from Europe and having, your neighbor being shot in the face, that's not something you recover from.
No.
And so I saw that in my grandparents and my mother-in-law who lived in Peru, she had just as hard or even harder of a life for other reasons, and being female was one of those reasons. And she was there to carry babies. And it's such a breakthrough when she says every morning, oh, thank goodness I'm alive another day. She's 95 years old and that's
Wow.
her attitude. I want that attitude today. I got another day. I'm sorry?
Is she in Peru or is she here?
She's in Peru now. She
Okay.
was with us for about 5 years when I had the young children. That's why I had to learn to speak Spanish because she doesn't speak English. And she taught me so much in silence. It's something we think we can only learn through talking. And I appreciate that so much from my own mother. But from my mother-in-law, I learned from actions and from her history and from her attitude and from her ability to see the world so beautifully when I was down and when I had roadblocks and problems. I just thought she wakes up every morning and says, oh, another day. Thank goodness for another day. It's just so beautiful.
Mhm. All right. I love this. Let's. I want to come back. Well, do I want to come back around to it? No, you covered it adequately. What's a myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
I think there are definitely two professions that I've stepped very heavily into, and one is a research scientist and one is an educator. And I think there are myths about both. The first myth that I'd like dispelled about research science, that it is, something that wastes resources, money, or even that it isn't something to be trusted. We've come to such a place right now that I never believed we would. I call it the Middle Ages of science again, where
Yeah.
people are not quite sure, if science is truth, when that's the definition. So that's my big sort of push to let people know, no, scientists, it's religious to us to be right. Like we do not, there's such few bad apples, as you would say. Like there are a couple scientists that would do this, but we shun them. We do not let them be back in. If they, do anything to mar that sacredness of truth, right? And, you know, not talk about and use data, right? That's so important to me. And I teach that to my students, how sacred that is. That really is. And unless you're a scientist, it's hard to understand. As a teacher, I think we have this unfortunate belief in this country that those who do and those who can't teach, something like that, right? Where you just go into teaching if that's like your last resort. We should be putting the very best people in that profession because it is the most important, in my opinion, and I'm so biased. But what I teach students, the seeds I plant, those are the most significant. If you think about the future of this world, right? So we really need to focus much more energy and effort and even our resources into the profession of teaching, so that, and I am so passionate about this that, I lead a group of 40. And every time we are together, we have boot camps, we have workshops, we talk about the, again, sacred nature of what we've been entrusted, these young minds, these young people. And when others think, well, teaching, it's just, it's barely a profession, it's not even a thing, it just riles me up. I think it should be the most important thing that we pay attention to if we want to improve the world, not just this country, but the whole world. And I think that teachers are not given enough resources. Teachers are not given enough credit. Teachers are not treated with the kind of respect they should be. And they are certainly not given the opportunity to better themselves, right? So this PD that we're offering teachers is so often so flat and so lackluster and doesn't have what they need. We need content specific, pedagogy driven, and technology enhanced. And that's, wow, that's very few opportunities that we have. And so that's why, to me, it's important for people to understand the importance. You know, it's just not something that in common conversation would come up and say, you know, the best thing I'd ever could be would be a teacher. You know, like even young people, they want to be a doctor or a lawyer because it pays well. Well, teaching should pay just as well. I want students to be excited about teaching like they're excited about being a doctor. Should be equal. Finland, I believe, does that, and their education is one of the best in the world.
Mm-hmm. I think you hit on a couple of things I want to emphasize again, that people don't understand. In research, there are checks and balances. People are not just given gobs of money and let loose to do whatever they want to do. I have been on the review panels for IRB and for the medical equivalents of those as well. So IACUC and all that stuff. We live in a world of acronyms. I'm not going to spell all those out, but essentially they are these review boards. Some people may have heard recently, one of the ones that's involved with the FDA because of coronavirus. You know, we have these experts who train vigorously for years who are entrusted, rightly so, with making determinations about, is the Johnson and Johnson vaccine safe for us to go ahead and do? What do we need to do? What warnings do we need to put out to the medical community? So there are checks and balances in there. And when someone does break the code, they are dealt with, and they are dealt with justly and swiftly. A lot of people had a negative reaction within the African American community to the vaccine push, and they wanted to run back to talk about Tuskegee. Here's the thing, and I'm going to say this loud for the back of the room. What happened with the Tuskegee experiment was awful. It was unforgivable, and it was dealt with.
Right.
And we have a lot of protections in place as a result because of that. It's horrible that it happened. Were the families adequately compensated? No, probably not, because it was horrific. And it wasn't until someone did it in a really bad way that we had the evidence to go ahead and say, we will not do this anymore. And rules are put into place. Similarly, in education, teachers go through vigorous training before, and they have to continuously renew their skills, just like nurses, just like doctors. So to say teachers aren't are doing their jobs and whatever it is, so many times when I hear that, it's parents who had a negative encounter in school, or they had a really good encounter in school, and they are thinking back to when they were in school and they're not seeing what they think should have happened. You may have been in school 20 years, 25 years prior, and things change. So this picking on people without doing your homework really needs to stop. Educators work hard, and they get a lot of thankless kind of abuse in doing that work. And they are not paid as well as they should or could be paid. And they do a lot of things for the children that families, quite frankly, ought to be doing.
I think that there is a little bit, again, I keep looking for silver linings. They're few and far between, but during the pandemic, parents had to become teachers and have realized, no, thank you, right? It is too hard. And by too hard, I mean to do it without training and support, which is what parents were asked to do. And so I think in some ways they're a little bit more grateful, maybe a little bit more aware.
Yes.
But there's so much beyond that, you know? Yeah, if you have your child at home or 3, imagine a classroom of 30, right? It's exponentially more difficult.
Precisely.
So so resources. The same thing for research. You know, people compete for very little money. You said there's little money in education. but there's also not the amount of money in research there should be for what we're trying to solve, for the problems that we're trying to solve. You know, as a young researcher, part of the reason I came into education, which I'm glad I did because because I'm just as good at it, I think, as a research scientist, I think one of the reasons was because funding at that moment became so desperate. Funding was like below 11%. So if I was a nobody starting out, no matter how good my idea was, there was no chance of me ever getting funded by NIH within a 5-year period that I was given. You know, there was no way. And I was not allowed to be on a grant of my advisor because there were too many other people on it, right, to be paid. So then I had no other options, right? I wrote a lot of little grants. I was writing so much more than I had ever thought I would need to. That was another thing. But then I brought that research scientist mind to education. And I think it's really improved it in so many ways, especially for teachers who are sort of struggling with getting professional development in their content area with all of this sort of richness that you know, when teachers come to our PD, they don't want to leave. Like that's the thing.
I've witnessed it. They're having fun, and everyone, especially teachers, ought to be able to have fun when they come in for their renewal. I was looking at the write-up that we did of the Central Arkansas Biosciences STEM camp the other day, and it kind of blew my mind because it was a while ago, so you don't think about it all the time in detail. But I looked and I went, wow, look at what we did. And it's still having a lasting impact. So it's nice to look and have those archives of thought and whatnot. I want to get into this spill the tea segment. Is there something you think that people ought to know about me that they don't know that you do? Or is there a question you would like me to answer? You can ask me any question. I have to answer it honestly, thoroughly.
Oh, wow. I want to do both. So first of all, I want to say that I've known Marta for a very long time. And the thing that people may not know about you is the passion that you bring to everything you do. It doesn't matter whether it's personal, professional, academic, or otherwise. Creativity abounds and nothing is out of the question. The out of the box thinking I've never encountered in another human being, the ability to be on the same wavelength without even talking, we're already there, is, I mean, the definition of a kindred spirit. The things that Marta has been able to overcome and do when people said, not going to happen, is truly inspirational. And that's why I've kept in touch and have been her friend for so many years, because she brings joy to me and a kind of optimism that I don't get very much from people who have to deal with such complex issues, because she does. Whatever's thrown her way, whatever comes her way, she just digests it down, boils it down. She had a big board where we worked together at one point, and it just was filled with ideas and breakthrough ways of dealing with things. So this creativity of approach, right? So there's many ways to peel an apple or whatever the saying is. Skin a cat. Yeah, I just thought, man, why do we have such weird saying? 2 birds, 1 stone. Now I'm saying 2 birds, 1 scone, because you can feed 2 birds with a scone, but I don't have to remember anything very complicated. So peel an apple instead of skin a cat. You know, that's better.
It's a little less violent.
Less graphic, right? Yeah. So that's what I've experienced, and that's what I know about Marta is her creativity coming to the forefront every time there's an issue, there's a problem, there's a challenge, there's a, you know, I could go to her tomorrow and say, I want to put on this big, and I did in the past, workshop for teachers to learn about biotechnology. They've never learned about it. They don't have any resources. And she would be like,
sure, it sounds like fun.
Let's do it. And I'd be like, no, this is just an idea. There's no way to do it, right? You can't be serious. So that, like I said, level of optimism I don't encounter on a daily basis. I'm usually told no, in no uncertain terms.
Encountering you at the point in my life when I did immeasurable good in helping me kind of have a restored sense of humanity and general decency.
That means so much to me. That
Yeah,
really does.
I needed it just as much as you did, I promise, because it is a cause to be told no all the time. I pretend like I don't understand what the meaning is. If it's something I think is right and just and true and needs to happen, it's going to happen, and either you're going to help me or you're going to get the hell out of my way. That's just how it is.
Right. And you know, it's amazing to get to the point in where you can do that. I think our positions limit us so much. I had to go so many circles and so many meandering ways to get to where I am today, so I can wear as many hats as I do, right? And honestly, I attribute 90% of them in some way to Marta, which I know sounds so self-serving and strange for me to say this, but I have proof. I have proof. All of my teacher education, my professional development that I offered to teachers at the beginning, and I went after a lot of different funding sources. Most of them started from Marta. This was, you know, almost 12, 13 years ago. When I wanted to make more impact in undergraduate population, it was Marta first who even thought that the Arkansas Summer Research Institute could be at ASMSA, even thought, let alone took it all the way through.
It had to be.
Now,
it had to be there.
It is such a neutral ground. You have no idea how positive that has been on recruiting professors. Now the NSF grant has been renewed for another 5 years. We've been doing this for 6 with Dr. Holden as a co-director, and it has blossomed. We had over 60 participants from all over the country because it was virtual in the summer last year. And it is just growing. It is just getting bigger and bigger. Its emphasis has shifted a little bit into data science, which is fine, which is great. And it could have never happened without Marta.
It was a time solution. We needed to have it. And so when you're living in a rural state and your resources are spread all over creation, you don't have the convenience of living in an urban center like Atlanta or New York or Los Angeles or Chicago. And you have to figure out how to get it done. We are a state of less than 3 million people, and we have young people all over the state, and every one of them deserves to have equal access to education. And anything we can do to go ahead and do that, I'm still about it. I still burn for it. Even though I had to take a break from it, I still burn for it, because I'm like, of course we have to do that for these kids. If we don't, we have people who grow up who don't understand science. They don't understand how to be decent human beings. They go around, and I'm gonna say it, why do I have to wear a mask? No, every kid that we touch, I guarantee you they know why they need to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, the ASRI is Marta's baby, and I was there in the inception, and it would have fizzled out. And Dr. Holden and I picked it up, and we work with Jennifer now, and she is amazing at maintaining the fervor that's necessary, right? So many programs died because people don't maintain that fervor. And she's young, and she breaks through, and she tells people where to be. It's awesome to watch a young woman do that. She's amazing.
I love Jennifer, and I'm gonna give the caveat of Jennifer is a native born Arkansan who went through then ASMS, who came back and is now continuing to break open doors and hold open doors of opportunity for other young Arkansans. She is
a baby and is doing PhD right now.
Yes,
so.
in data sciences, I think, or something like that. So I'm like, don't tell me it doesn't work to go ahead and invest in an education, because
it absolutely does.
And y'all are to be commended. I pushed it through the door and helped get it set up, but you're right. You guys had to come in and you had to take it and you had to run with it. And I know how hard you fought for it. So it makes me happy every time I see the announcement come out during another round. I'm like, yes, share. Look at this, share.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And the students who come out of it have so many connections and networks. And we have close to 30 professors from all over the state who participate without having to twist their arm. I mean, how beautiful.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
I know. It's getting there. And the third thing, so I talked about teacher PD, I talked about my the ASRI, and that's 2 big chunks of what I do. The third chunk is students, right? And I was able to actually see Marta teach herself, right? So I have always interacted with her previous to that as a doer, of getting people to the next step and helping to push big programs and ideas. But I had never seen her teach herself and inspire young people until she came to work where I do. And I saw it. I saw this energetic, really, again, creative way of approaching students so they would get pumped up about what they were doing. They got little projects and things that they never did before as ambassadors. And they had so much, I don't even know the word to use appropriately because there isn't a word for it, but they had a fire lit under them. And I feel like this Ignite Arkansas's Future, which has become sort of our logo, came really from Marta, where you really do have to inspire people with your own self and creativity and ability to think outside the box of what education is. And so that inspired me to be a little bit different in my classroom, right? So instead of just content, instead of just pedagogy and this technology that I use, I added this personal touch that is not just my own stories, but the students' stories. How do you want to learn this content? How do you want to participate? What is it that you would like to do, right? And so that's something that so new, so different, so outside of the box thinking. And that's Marta right there. What I want to ask you is your best moment, but really not personally, but professionally, right? And it doesn't have to be 5 seconds. It could be the best decision or the best time or kind of the best of the best, because I know there were a lot of hard times. I know there were a lot of great times. What is that single moment? I didn't prepare you for this, so I want to see that kind of raw response right there.
Oh my gosh, because I have many, and I'm gonna watch the time, make sure we don't bump up against your time. Gosh, I have many, but it's like picking your favorite child. I mean, it's that is a tough one.
I know. I know. And that's why I want to put you on the spot, because your answer, I already I don't know which one it will be, but I know the answer will include all these things that I know about you.
It's got to be cats, because that was one of those times where I was like, there's no way in the world. This is what happens sometimes on the grad, y'all. You can have some money and you're coming to the end, and a funder doesn't want you sending the money back. It messes up the books. When they've given it to you, they've trusted you, you're supposed to go ahead and spend it down to the last penny, literally. And I don't believe in leaving money on the table at all. It needs to go to the purpose it's supposed to go to. So I had a situation where we had some money that had gone unspent, and we wanted to do a camp, an all-state camp, where we could invite some educators, but focus on bright young students who were, I think it was sophomores, juniors, seniors, maybe, or something like that in high school. I know they were not freshmen. We didn't have the babies, but no one wanted to fund it. No one wanted to fund the idea. We were like, are you out of your mind? Of course we need to go ahead and do this. This is going to help them to get ready so that when they hit college, they're going to be able to get into the labs. And oh, by the way, we need to make sure we're making it inclusive of everyone, not just who you typically see in these labs. So I was just beside myself. I had an opportunity to put it at one institution, and that institution refused. I won't call the name, but they refused to sign the last daggone paper so that I could move the money to where it needed to be. And it was very close to the deadline. I was like, oh no, I cannot let these kids down. I cannot let these folks down. I cannot let the team down. And so I reached out to a friend at another institution. That institution was the University of Central Arkansas, and we got it done. But y'all, one of the things that we had to do was we got put into a room that wasn't even set up as a lab. It was an exercise sciences room with mats laid out for therapy and whatnot. And I was like, all right, one of the hottest summers in Arkansas, roll up your sleeves. We got to get this room ready and get it arranged. And I mean,
we need some tables.
We need tables. Get me some tables. I need these tables. Don't give me excuses. Get me tables, And it was just like, because we were just in it. But
extension cords for all our equipment. I remember driving with the van every day, like full of equipment, this very expensive biotechnology equipment. It was such a crazy, it was such a crazy summer. But you know what I learned? There was one moment that crystallizes it for me, and I hope that you appreciate how much that is thanks to you. We were walking between the lectures and the labs. And in the back, there were students talking, and I could hear, and they said, I learned more in 2 days than in 2 years of science classes.
I don't know if I heard
I mean,
you told me, but yes, and that's the moment. So it was the occasion and then the moment. And actually, this is interesting. This other one happened at UCA too. And unfortunately, I don't think you were there. This is one I did with my mom. But we were using some of the stuff that you had helped prepare. We were doing a teacher training in the UCA STEM Center with Dr. Uma Garamala. And it was a similar situation with the teachers. The teachers were like, oh my gosh, like this, can we have more of this? And they didn't want to leave. And that happened every time we did the biofuel stuff down in Pine Bluff and in Jonesboro. And whenever we would go with our team, you know, we always did things in excellence. And that's one of those shining moments for me. It's also one of my greatest frustrations still too, because even with that evidence, we haven't been able to get anybody to go ahead and see. Just give them the doggone money they need so they can go do what we need to do.
This should just be an automatic. This should be an automatic. If you think about the amount of outcome you get from the amount of input, right? It's a lot of work, but the amount of money that we're asking for is not a lot. It's not a lot. It really is not.
And you get so much. Which took care of it. I don't think it was even $20,000, but that took care of all the lodging for the students, the food service. We paid y'all a little money because they never let me pay you what you were really worth. Faculty always have to take pennies when it comes to doing outreach stuff, you know, because we get in trouble if we pay them their worth. You know, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, but that's, and both of those things happen at UCA. That's so funny. I need to tell them about that. Like, I've had two really good memory moments with them. They're great people there. All right. So is there anything that you want to point people toward? Anything you want them to know you have coming up or anything like that before we get off? Because I know you got to teach.
I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, and my name I think is right there in the bottom, Patrycja Krakowiak. I do want to leave with one thing that sort of gets me up in the morning, and that is gratitude, right? So I'm so grateful for the relationships that I have been able to grow in Arkansas. The best of the best, really. I am so grateful for my family, my children, my husband, who has been another piece of this puzzle of inspiration. He's a teacher in Arkadelphia High School. He teaches Spanish, and every day he moves through mountains. He moves through, you know, so many obstacles to get those kids excited about learning another language, about other cultures. He does so much good, and he's so exhausted doing it because it is such a heavy lift. He's an inspiration to me. And he has also shared a lot of things that he does in his classrooms that work and the technologies and things. So I'm so grateful for him and his impact on my life. He is also much more of a type B personality, whereas I'm type A. So he has calmed me down. Believe this, Marta, this has calmed down me.
I know.
I literally had ulcers and he calmed me down, you know. And I'm grateful for my students and the teachers I teach. I think of all of them as my colleagues, people on the same journey, trying to learn more. And, you know, if I'm alive for one reason, it is to learn. And so I want to leave with that, with gratefulness of who we are and what we've been given, and what we do with it is all up to us.
That is a wonderful way to sign it off. Thank you so much for sharing with me, friend. And I miss you. I'm getting my second shot tomorrow, so I'm going to be able to, you know.
I'm fully vaxxed. So anytime I want you to come down, or I can go up there. We got to have lunch together. That's for sure. Outside somewhere, but we need to do it.
I am missing a few little special places in Hot Springs, so you know, I
we need to do it.
I'll let you know.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Showing Our Sass Season 2. We appreciate everyone who's been with us along this route. If you're new, you know what to do. Go ahead and like, subscribe, share, comment, all the good things. And I just want you to know we appreciate you so much and look forward to bringing you even more things. We'll see you next week.